Hello and welcome to today's admin chat, which is all about working with a virtual assistant. My name's Amanda Johnson and I'm from VACT Limited. So today's admin chat is all about how working with a virtual assistant can help you and help the business that you work for. You might be an employed PA or an employed EA or an admin professional or even a business owner listening to this chat. And what I'd like to do is just show you how working with a VA can be of benefit to you. Before I do that, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about myself so that you can see how this all fits together. So my name's Amanda Johnson. I did 23 years service in the military where I was a logistics officer, and I've been everything from responsible to a large team of people through to being the right-hand person of the boss of that particular organisation. I left the military in 2012, set up my own VA business, and at that time I trained with VACT. And fast forward a couple of years, I bought the company and I ran VACT alongside my VA business. But after a while, I made the decision to sell off my VA business and just focus on coaching, mentoring and training, which is what I do now. I'm really passionate about inspiring business owners. Now, that could be virtual assistants themselves, or that could be the organisations who are working with virtual assistants. But it's something I absolutely love. And so I hope in tonight's webinar, I can inspire you to consider the options of working with VAs in the future. If you'd like to tweet me during admin chat, please feel free to do so. My Twitter ID is on the screen for you. It's @VATrainingPro, and please use the hashtag adminchat. And I will go through and check and answer any questions you've got. And that's any questions about either becoming a virtual assistant, working with a virtual assistant, anything around that industry. I'd love to answer those questions for you. So you're probably wondering what questions you're probably wondering some questions about the VA industry and why is it relevant to you as an employed PA, EA, admin professional to even consider working with VAs. And these tend to be the type of questions that those in employed roles have. VAs, for some people, can feel like competition, and trust me, they're not. The VA industry is actually a really collaborative industry, and that's no different to the admin profession industry. If you think about it, your boss is going somewhere, you need to find out some information, you don't know. What do? You revert to your network of contacts and you ask them. And that's exactly the same with working with VAs. So during this webinar, we're going to talk about who virtual assistants are, how they can support us in the workplace, the type of skills that they have and the services that they can provide to organisations. And then we'll talk about the features and the benefits and the difference that it is. We'll have a quick conversation about what we should be looking out for and the practicalities of actually working with a virtual assistant. People often think that VAs are going to be expensive. And on the other hand, they think that VAs can be really, really cheap because we've all heard of this sort of third countries where they're providing admin support at very cheap prices. So we're going to talk about what's the norm, I think is a good way of describing it for you. We're going to give you some ideas on how you can make working with virtual assistants work for your organisation. And if at the end of it you've got questions about becoming a VA, I'm going to signpost you somewhere where you can find out a little bit more information if you want to. So who are virtual assistants? It's really interesting. I've shared with you here 24 different names of what VAs get called. But as a virtual assistant, the job title is irrelevant, actually. It's more about the services that people provide. And it's about knowing what you're looking for. So the phrase virtual assistant traditionally applies to somebody who provides admin support on a freelance basis working remotely. But that definition of admin support has widened so much. It includes everything from social media through to operations management through to customer service. It can be whatever it is you're looking for. And so don't just think, oh, VA, and you look at the first VA's website and there's a list of things that they do and it's none of the things that you're looking for. Don't stop there, because quite often a virtual assistant will use the phrase to describe them that their ideal clients is looking for. So perhaps that first VA you've come across isn't the right VA for you, and they may not have the skills that you need, but there will be other ones out there that do. The big thing is, these are just labels. They are labels to describe what somebody does. And so think about the language that people use on a global basis to perhaps be describing what it is they're looking for. Because VAs can work with clients literally anywhere in the world. And they'll work with individuals, corporates, small to medium-sized businesses. They'll work with a variety of organisations, everything from third sector through to NGOs, through to charities, through to major organisations. 2 of the major banks in the UK work with virtual assistants. Now, the label or the job title, virtual assistant, is a little bit confused nowadays, because we even have major organisations who have employed PAs called virtual assistants. So basically the employed PAs work remotely for, let's say, 80% of their working week, and so the organisation calls them a virtual assistant because, for in all intents and purposes, they are working virtually to support their clients or their bosses. So it does get a little bit muddy, and I'm really sorry for that. I can't change that for you. So what I would say, though, is if you are looking for somebody to do a particular project on a short-term basis, a virtual assistant might be the answer for you, because as the flexibility in our employed workspaces gets degraded for whatever reasons, or we need to take control over a particular area, let's say a financial budget, or we've been really constrained on the money, but you've still got a particular task to do. Well, instead of employing somebody on a full-time basis, which comes with a whole raft of overheads, what you could do is bring in somebody for a short-term measure to do a particular task for you. So how can a virtual assistant help? I was chatting to somebody the other day who I happened to just meet in passing. We were both at somebody else's place of work, and she said to me, "Oh, I love VAs." And I said, "Oh, where's that then? Tell me more." And she said, "Because they really are an invisible workforce." And I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, quite often you can give a project to a virtual assistant and it just gets done. They don't come back 100 times with questions or things like that. But I just know that if I engage my virtual assistant, she's either got the contacts to talk to the variety of people in the other areas, or she actually has some knowledge in these other particular areas, and the job just gets done. And it is like having an invisible workforce." And I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "And when I travel, it's brilliant because my VA will talk to VAs in other countries and do some research for me about those particular places to make sure that actually I'm not going to make any faux pas." And I was like, "Yeah." And then she said, "And the other great thing is if somebody's off sick, we actually can bring in some backup cover with a VA to help us, whether that's managing emails remotely, whether that's from a call handling perspective." And she was literally almost writing this presentation for me. And I was like, "It's brilliant, it's great." So the way you can look at this is a VA can be your invisible workforce, but at the same time, it can be your temporary solution. And for some people, it's not just business support. So let's think about the work that you do on a day-to-day basis. For small to medium-sized business owners, they don't have somebody who can do absolutely everything. Quite often, as PAs or EAs, we have an understanding of the various elements of the job, but actually we're not necessarily experts, and sometimes we need an expert for something. When I was VAing, I used to work with a particular client, and every time he asked me to design a flyer or a poster or something like that, I would literally cringe in my seat. And he used to say to me, "But why can't you do this? You're a VA." And I was like, because it's not my strength. It's not my zone of genius. We are much better off either bringing in a virtual assistant who loves that side of things, or we actually use somebody who's a subject matter expert in it. Because do you know what? Graphic design and designing posters, that's really not my strength. And it took him a long time to get it until we actually had our personality profiles done. And when he looked at my personality profile, he said, "Yeah, I get it now. It really isn't your zone of genius." And I said, "No, it's not." So virtual assistants will play to their strengths. So let's say you've got a particular event coming up. You don't want to give that piece of work to somebody in the office because we're already busy. Resources are already busy. You could bring in a VA who specialises in events, who loves events, who loves all of the behind the scenes stuff, who can make it go amazingly for you. And do you know what? They come in, they do the event, and then they go again. It really is a temporary solution. Perhaps you've a member of the team in the office needs to go on to maternity or has gone long-term sick. And what you could do is look to work with a virtual assistant on a regular basis. So they get to know your company, but they only work with you as and when you need them. So perhaps they're the cover for maternity, or perhaps they're the cover for sickness. You don't have to explain the ins, the outs, the ways of working within the company each time they support you, because actually they've already done that. But you use them for the period of time that you need them, and then they go again. Let's say your organisation's just won a particular big piece of work or a contract, and actually there's an influx of work, and it's all hands on deck, and you need to get a particular job done. You could bring in a virtual assistant to help with those types of things. Or you need to recruit a significant number of new members of the team. There are VAs who are experts in recruitment or supporting that recruitment process, and it can ease the pressure of your HR departments. The final one on the screen is not just business support. It's about using a virtual assistant either in your personal life, for personal admin or lifestyle concierge services. This is fast becoming an up and coming trend. We're all busy and we're all trying to fit so much more into a day. And by working with virtual assistants who specialise and who enjoy that particular sector can really make a difference. A couple of the VAs I work with use this side of their business to support high net worth individuals or to support those who are relocating between countries. So a couple of the VAs that I work with in mainland Europe are experts at supporting people who are being redeployed to specific countries. And what they will do is they will facilitate the process. And although a lot of big organisations already have in-house teams that do that, they're very much focused on the person that works for the company. Whereas actually the virtual assistant can be used to help everything else that's going to be about that relocation. So perhaps supporting the wife, perhaps helping the family find schools for the children, or even just giving advice on where's the best place to go grocery shopping, or how to get your car taxed, and all those sorts of things. So VAs don't have to be just for business support. They can be from a personal level support too. Now, you might be wondering how a VA can support businesses whilst working remotely. We'll talk about tools and technology in a minute, but let's just talk about the sort of number of bosses that we currently support on a typical day anyway. Most PAs, EAs, admin professionals in employed roles support at least 2 people, with the vast majority of them supporting 3 or 4 on a normal basis. And there'll be competing priorities and somebody calling for your attention at all times, and sometimes you won't know which way you're going. When you're a virtual assistant and you're supporting multiple bosses, it can feel a little bit like that. But what VAs get accustomed to doing is exactly the same to you as you do when you're in an employed role, is they'll become very deadlines focused. You know what are the conflicting demands on your time, you know what the priorities are on particular tasks, you know when it's got to be done by. And so, as a VA who's supporting multiple bosses or multiple clients, you just become an expert at juggling. And you know what? That's no different to you listening to this call. We're all become experts at juggling time. I'm sat here doing this with my hands, by the way. It's through no fault of our own that organisations are stripping down to the bare minimum number of staff. That's financial constraints, and it's not going to change anytime soon. And so if you could bring in a VA to help you, either as that invisible workforce, either as that temporary short-term cover, or even some of the extra things that quite often we're being asked to do, then do you know what? As long as they know the deadline, you don't really need to worry about when they're doing the particular piece of work, as long as it gets done. Now, if you need a VA to make phone calls or to be sending emails during core hours, yeah, okay. They do need to make sure they're aware of those things and they're complying with that, because you don't necessarily want your boss's emails going out at 11 o'clock at night. But it really depends what it is you outsource to them. So please don't worry about VA supporting multiple people in multiple locations. Now, you probably also support bosses who are constantly travelling, who are in different time zones, in different locations and things like that. And it might be your boss needs to go somewhere for an extended period of time, and actually you might want somebody who can be on hand during the core hours that he's going to be working. So let's say they're going out to Australia for some meetings or America for some meetings, and there's going to be work that falls out of the work that they're doing there that needs to be done for the following day. What you could do is recruit or work with a virtual assistant in that time zone so that they are supported. And so don't fear those sorts of things. See this as a great resource and a great benefit to you, and how you can actually make sure your boss's lives are easier and supported. The things that they need to do, the areas that they need to shine in, can still happen. Okay? Let's talk about some of the features and the benefits. Now, I've muddled this slide up for you. Some people will tell you the features of working with a VA are that they're self-employed, there's no tax, no national insurance, no medical pay, no sick pay, holiday pay, and all of those things, no pension contributions. You're going to pay for what you use. Yeah, that's the features of working with a VA. And that doesn't change with whichever VA you work with. But the benefits are really depending on you, your organisation, and the VA that you're talking to and what it is you're wanting them to do. And so I've shared with you some of the things that you might see as benefits to your particular organisation. And really, it's about finding the right person who perhaps shares the same vision and values as your company. And that's totally achievable. when you sort of look at the various people out there, you don't want a jack of all trade, master of none who doesn't get you or your company. You want somebody who's going to fit in to the team, who feels like they've always been part of your team, but who can help deliver the dreams, the desires, the outputs, the needs of the organisation. We want somebody who is going to work with us, who's not out there to try and change things unless that's what we're bringing them in to do, but who's going to fit, I almost want to say fit the company mould, but who's going to work and help deliver your company ethos. And that's all totally achievable when we look at the features and the benefits of working with that particular individual. Okay? So what's the practicalities? Well, virtual assistants can pretty much work from anywhere, provided they've got the internet, telephone, computer. But the critical things that you need to make sure that they've got in place are things like insurances, data protection, and that they've got a legal contract. Now, when you're outsourcing work to somebody else, the VA should provide you with a contract. Now, that contract is there to protect you both. In the same way that them having insurance, it's there to protect you. And it depends on the type of work they're doing for you, might dictate the type of insurance. So as a standard, I'd want VAs to have professional indemnity insurance, public liability insurance, potentially cyber insurance. And I'd certainly want them to be registered for data protection with the Information Commissioner's Office, especially as moving forward with the changes that GDPR is going to bring in. Virtual assistants have a big responsibility to play in making sure they protect your company data. So those would be the absolute basics that I would be looking for when working with a VA. You're not looking for them to have their own necessarily software if you're looking for a particular thing. Let's say your company works with a particular piece of software that's bespoke to you. The VA, you might want somebody who's used to using that software, but you wouldn't expect them to necessarily provide that software. But at the same time, I would expect them to be able to, what's the right phrase? To have the basics. So I would expect Word, Excel, Office, those sorts of things on their machine. But if you're looking for a particular piece of software, I wouldn't necessarily expect the VA to have it. Unless you're trying to recruit somebody who does graphic design or web design and things like that, then they probably would have that software. So where are you going to find these VAs? Do you know what? 6 years ago, I didn't even know what a virtual assistant was. Because actually I didn't have a need to look for virtual assistants. I was in the military, and at that point the military didn't use VAs. But when you start opening your eyes and opening your possibility to virtual assistants, you'll find that they're everywhere. And lots of businesses are already using them. I think I said earlier, 2 of the major banks in the UK are using virtual assistants as part of their teams. Other large major corporations are using virtual assistants as part of their teams. But if you've been asked to find this invisible workforce for your organisation, start with looking at your existing network. Look at LinkedIn and see who you're already connected with, who happens to be a virtual assistant. Look at who you know through the professional organisations that you're a member of. So initially, I'd start with my existing network. I'd then be looking at things like LinkedIn, social media. I'd be looking at the organisations that I was a member of, so IMA, Executive Secretary. I'd look to things that are VA-specific organisations, Society of VAs, Be My VA, and then I'd be looking at places like Google. If I said to you that virtual assistants generally get their clients from their existing network through face-to-face networking and then social media. And then social media is LinkedIn first, followed by Facebook. Do you know what? It's exactly the same list of things that I've just said to you is a great place to be looking for you to find a virtual assistant. So use it. Because actually, when we are looking for a recommendation or a referral, the best place for anything, even if it was to get your washing machine repaired or something like that, is we would go to our existing network and we would ask those that we're connected with, who should I use? Who can help me with this? Who do you recommend? Because a recommendation holds far more weight and far more power than anything. And so it's a great place to start. Tools of a virtual assistant change absolutely daily. So I said earlier on that the bare minimum would be the computer, the internet, the phone line, and those sorts of things. And then actually from there, the software, it really depends on the software and what you're asking the VA to do. But if you think about it, years and years ago, and actually not even that many years ago, if we're absolutely honest, we used to go to work to do our job because the tools that we needed to do that work were large, they were cumbersome, and therefore we needed to go to a physical place to do that piece of work. I still remember filing cabinets and typewriters and Kalamazoos, which used to be the directory of how you found your particular file and things like that. And then we moved to computers and then laptops and now smartphones and mobile devices. The tools are constantly changing. And I mean, I travelled for a number of reasons last year on a personal basis. My father was ill and things like that. Do you know what? I ran my business from my iPad. Okay, it's got a keyboard, but I ran my business and delivered my outputs to my clients via my iPad. Can you imagine sort of 5 years ago or even 10 years ago being able to do that with so much ease? I certainly can't. So these are some of the current tools that VAs are using. Now, what I've tried to do is just give you the name of some of the software and the tools that they're using. But actually, do you know what? If I change that VA to PA, the tools are pretty much the same. If I ask those of you on the call what tools you're using to deliver your job at the moment, there would be a lot of commonality. And although every business is different, there's commonality in the tools and the software that we're using in order to deliver our outputs. And I think the thing to remember is, as virtual assistants, it's their responsibility to try and keep up to date with the various tools that are out there. But actually, it's about getting the job done. And so please don't think as VAs that they're not going to be able to deliver it because they can't use your software or something like that. Talk to them. The other thing to be aware of is a lot of those tools that are there, yes, there's different names and there's different products, but actually they all work in a very similar way. Okay. Are VAs expensive? Well, do you know what? There's no set price. There is no industry standard price. What I can tell you is the majority of VAs who are worth working with will value their worth and charge a price that is comparable with it. Now, we need to remember that there's no tax, no national insurance for you to pay, no pension contributions or anything else. The VAs themselves pay that. And so they're going to charge based on their experience, their skills, and their worth. Depending on the VA, they might sell you time as a package. So they might sell you a block of hours and then track their time to the minute or to the 15 minutes. And some of them will charge in advance, some of them will charge in arrears. What I am going to say is be wary of too cheap. Now, too cheap puts off the good clients, is what I actually tell VAs, because if we don't value, as VAs, if we don't value our worth, good clients aren't going to value our worth either. And so when VAs market themselves too cheap, a little alarm bell rings up here. And when you're trying to find somebody and they're really, really cheap, that alarm bell needs to ring for you too. And it might be that they're cheap because they're just starting out and they're not working with somebody like me who's coaching them to charge their worth, or they could be cheap for a reason. I don't know about you, but quite often if we charge or we buy cheap, we buy twice. Have you ever found that? If you go out there and you don't invest and you just buy something cheap and cheerful, invariably it's either thrown away after a couple of weeks or it doesn't even make that. And sometimes that's right. That can be okay for what it is you need to do. But in this particular case, I want you to think about too cheap might be a reason. Now, there are no additional overheads when you work with a VA. And I obviously decided that was a really important point because I wrote it on the slide twice. But there are no additional overheads. Sometimes VAs will charge you for stationery if you need a particular type of stationery, or printing or things like that, or maybe travel if you need them to travel somewhere. But generally, what you pay is all you're going to pay. And therefore, if we think back to one of the reasons I said you might want to work with a VA within your business about giving you that control for a particular, from a financial perspective, it makes a big difference. You know what you're getting. Okay, making it work. VAs are first and foremost a business owner. They are people exactly the same as you. They tend to come from a PA and EA background. And now they've gone on for whatever reason and set themselves up as a self-employed business owner. And when you're recruiting staff to work within an organisation, you go through a bit of a process in order to find the right person. And that is no different when you're trying to find the right VA for your organisation. You need to find somebody who is aligned to the organisation's vision and values, who's actually going to focus on the outputs of the organisation in the same way that you do. It's about wanting to work, I don't say to the common goal, or the common aim, but actually you need somebody who's going to help you get to where you want to go. In the same way as you have a new member of staff in the organisation, you need to build relationships. And communication is always going to be absolutely critical. Now, for some people, working with a VA is about embracing new ways of working. The amount of time people have said to me, no, we can't have somebody come and help us because actually they have to be physically in our office. Nobody will be able to understand the way we work unless they're in the office. I tend to argue that, but that's fine. It's about embracing new ways of working. And VAs are having to do that too, you know. Although I said there's a bit of a recruitment process and you're about finding the right person who's the right fit for your organisation, what we need to remember is we're outsourcing and we're not employing. VAs are going to be deadline focused and output focused. You can't say, I need you to sit there and do that particular piece of work between 9 and 10 tomorrow. As long as they meet your particular goals, your particular deadlines, it's fine. We've talked about having the fundamentals, a contract, insurance, data protection, and all of that. Please make sure they're in place before you start working together. It's about keeping you safe and it's about keeping the business that you work for safe. and they are critical. And then finally, it's about being awesome. I'm known for saying, be you, be awesome. But actually, this is about helping you and your organisation get to where you want to go. And it's about helping the overall goal to be successful. And so a great way of doing that is about recognising that each and every one of us have different strengths to play within this setup and within this organisation. And actually, VAs can enhance that. They can enhance that whole process. So it's about being awesome. Now, if I've inspired you to think, hell, perhaps I want to become a virtual assistant, then what you can do is I have a free guide that's available on the homepage of my website, and I'll share the details of the website in a second. But I have a free guide that's on that website that talks people through the process of setting up as a virtual assistant. There's also a webinar on the homepage of the site, but quite often you've got questions that you just need to get your head around first of all as to whether it's the right thing for you. And so the free guide is a great starting point. I hope you've enjoyed this admin chat. I've enjoyed sharing this information with you. But if I've left you with any questions, please feel free to contact me. I've put my details on the screen for you. So I've given you my website address, which is www.vact.co.uk. And there's lots of information on there about working with virtual assistants, how to become a virtual assistant, and things like that. I'm very active on social media. 5-6 years ago, I was petrified of social media. Since being a business owner and all of that, I've really come to love it. And I love the support and things that groups such as AdminChat give us. I mean, it's brilliant. It's a great learning resource. And so please, if you want to connect with me on social media, I've given you my Twitter ID and my LinkedIn ID. But if you go to the website, you'll see the rest of my social media profiles. Just click through and connect. Send me a message. But seriously, if I've left you with any questions and I haven't answered them as part of this webinar, message me, tweet me, send me an email. I really don't mind. And I will do my absolute best to help you. But what I would say is virtual assistants are a great resource. Please don't see them as your competition. See them as an opportunity to collaborate. And as we know, the admin profession, whether we're a PA, EA, or any other job title, or a VA, we all know that actually we support each other. And when we support each other, we're capable of achieving amazing things. And so on that note, thank you.